I recently released my 2025 Electional Astrology Report where I go through and highlight the luckiest dates over the course of the next year, and I wanted to do a video to talk about it and give people a heads up about the report because I'm actually doing a launch sale this week only where it's 20% off, but only until January 6th. So this is an annual report that I put out every year for at least the past 5 or 6 years with Leisa Schaim, where we go through and we analyze each of the months over the course of the next year, and we do a big picture overview of what some of the most difficult parts of the year are going to be and what some of the most positive parts of the year are going to be. And then we really focus in on telling people what the best date is each month to try to do major things in their life when the chances for success are going to be much better and the chances for major drawbacks or obstacles or setbacks are going to be much lower. So this is entirely using a branch of astrology known as Electional Astrology, which is an ancient branch of astrology where you choose different times to act. So the entire premise of this, it's based on the basic premise of astrology, which is that there's a correlation between celestial movements and earthly events. And part of the process or the premise is that once astrologers figured out that the alignment of the planets in the future was consistently coinciding with what would take place, and sometimes there would be good events or bad events that would coincide with certain planetary transits, it was the next step after that was easy to make as they started developing this idea of, well, what if you could choose some days to do things that are better than other days just based on the astrological weather? And that created this entire tradition of astrology over the past 2,000 years of picking lucky or inauspicious dates in order to do things in order to maximize your chances of success. So this is a branch of astrology I've really come to specialize in over the past 10 or 15 years, where every month I highlight a monthly electional chart in our monthly forecast episodes, which is like the best date in a given month in order to do things. Like that can be either major things like planning a date for a marriage, or going on a major trip, or starting a business. But it can also be smaller things like sending an email or getting together with a friend for like an important meeting, hosting a party, or other things like that. One of the things about our electional charts is that we try to pick out dates that are generally useful for most things. But what we do during the course of this report, which is a 3-hour long video that also comes with a written PDF synopsis with all of the dates mentioned, is we go through each chart and we tell you why the chart that we picked for that date in that month is positive, and what some of the best things are that you could use it for that would be the most advantageous. And then we also tell you some things that the chart is probably not as good for or that you should probably avoid. So you can get into very specific things in terms of that if you're looking for a good date next year to get married or a good date to launch a business or go on a trip. But then you can also use these charts as just generally good dates for doing things as well, and sort of knowing the different parts of the month and which parts of the month are going to be more tricky for doing things. That way you can get in some of your most important activities during the better times of the month. So we've been doing this report for several years now, since I think at least 2018 or 2019, and it's always been very successful. This year we decided to lower the cost of the report a little bit in order to make it more accessible to people. And we also decided to do a 20% off launch sale where you can get it for 20% less than the price that it's going to go up to after January 6th. So right now you can get the report for $44.95 on my website at theastrologypodcast.com/2025 report. And the report comes with a 3-hour video where Leisa, Schaim, and I go through all of the 22 charts that we picked out for next year, because we picked out primarily one good date for each month, basically, in each of the next 12 months. But then we also gave some variant charts to give you some other options for occasionally there were multiple times on the same date that would be good times to start something. And other times in certain months, we decided to give 2 different dates in order to give people some options. If one date doesn't work for them, then they have like a fallback date that they could use instead. And this gives people greater flexibility in terms of having some options to work with, both in terms of different dates as well as different times during the day to launch things. So the report's always been hugely successful and people always look forward to it. So we always enjoy doing it each year. And it's really fun for me because I get to use some of the skills that I've built up over the years of doing the forecast episodes where we kind of predict the events for the year ahead, and we talk about what some of the most difficult alignments are, and we talk about some of the most positive transits. But in this report, it's much more practical because it gives people some information that they can actually act on and plan their life around. And it's always fun to hear from people after the year is over to hear how the events went and what they ended up using them for. And astrologers have used electional astrology for many, many centuries now in order to launch a lot of really important things. So for example, there's been many major cities that have been founded under auspicious electional charts. There's been different movies have been launched based on electional astrology, like the original Star Wars movie in the 1970s. There was the movie studio hired an astrologer that used electional astrology to pick a successful release date for that. And then the movie ended up being wildly successful. Even kings and politicians have used electional astrology for many centuries in order to, achieve things and to become successful in the sphere of politics. So the purpose of this electional report is to make this ancient approach to astrology more accessible to individuals by doing all of the hard work ahead of time for you in picking out the best dates. And then you can use that information based on what your own career goals or aspirations or other things that you want to focus on in terms of your life at this time. So the report comes with a 3-hour video. There's also an audio version of the report. There's also an extensive PDF written version of the report, which you can use for quick reference. And then in addition to that, there's some bonus stuff that comes with it, such as we have a tutorial for how to adapt our electional charts to your city and location. And that's really useful because then it's not just giving you a chart set for Denver, but instead we teach you how to take our reference chart and adapt it to whatever city you live in around the world so that it's more specific to you and where you live. And then finally, another bonus thing that comes with it is there's a 2-hour video tutorial that we give as part of the report that teaches you how to make sure that your birth chart aligns well with our electional chart. So this is useful because then you can know how to take into account not just that it's a lucky day in general, but also how to make sure that it's also a date that lines up well with your birth chart. That way you can emphasize certain dates that you know are going to be better rather than other days that might be a little bit more tricky. So it's a pretty good package, and I'm pretty excited to release it again this year for 2025 because this is a year in which there's a lot of big astrology and a lot of big astrological alignments and a lot of changes that we're all going to be navigating, especially with all of the outer planet ingresses with basically every outer planet changing signs, which is why in the year ahead forecast, I call 2025 the year that everything changes. It's because Pluto has just changed signs after being in Capricorn for something like 15 years. Neptune is changing signs after being in Pisces since 2011. Uranus is changing signs after being in Taurus since 2018. Saturn is changing signs. Jupiter's changing signs. Venus and Mars are both going retrograde. It's basically going to be a crazy year, as we talked about in the year ahead forecast. But that's why we did this report to help people navigate some of the big changes and the somewhat stormy astrological weather that's coming up, especially at different points, like in the spring, like in March, where there's going to be a kind of crazy eclipse season going on. So if you would like to take advantage of this and get access to some of those lucky dates, and if you'd like to take advantage of the discount that's happening this week, then you can go to theastrologypodcast.com/2025 report. Take advantage of that discount before the price jump on January 6th. And otherwise, I hope you really enjoy the report. So let me know if you have any questions about it in the comments. But otherwise, good luck with your elections this year in 2025, and I'll see you again next time.